I feel like this is probably not very popular advice, but this process, this tactic has been present in every single honest, healthy relationship. Every relationship that was somewhat honest and healthy, like, had to go through this process before it got to that point. And I'll explain what I mean. So if you are anxiously attached, like, let's just use the standard, like, anxious, avoidant, descriptive terms, right? Like, that both kind of stem from the same thing, right? Because, like, both sort of have this fear of rejection, this fear of intimacy, this fear of losing people. You know what I mean? Like, even avoidance, like, have that. It's just like a different tactic of doing the same thing. So, like, avoidance will shut people out, they'll close themselves off so they don't have to handle that heartbreak, that rejection. They just stay very detached in the first place. You know what I mean? Anxious people do the opposite. So they're leaning in, they're smothering, they're trying to control so they can earn that love, that validation, to avoid that rejection, the fear of someone leaving, the fear of it ending. If you are in that boat, if you are an anxious person and you find yourself either in a dynamic or usually in dynamics like this where you feel like you don't have power, you feel like you're very attached to what this other person's doing, maybe you're a little bit obsessive, like, the whole reason that you're so anxious about it is because you are so afraid that this person is going to leave, this person's going to reject you, this person's going to hurt you. There's so much fear. And so all of this anxiety gets put into trying to ensure that that doesn't happen. And so I want to say one thing, that, like, when relationships start out, I think a lot of the times, like, there's gonna be this, like, heavy, like, romance aspect, like limerent, like puppy love, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of times, like, initially we feel like, oh my gosh, like, this person's everything, this is our person. We're very blinded initially, you know what I mean? And so we end up, like, pedestalizing people, and that can be really, really fun. And so what happens is it, like, turns into this high, you know what I mean? And that's fine and that's fun and all, but eventually there's going to come a point where it governs you, it dictates you, because now you're getting these hits from this person who's not even really real. You probably don't even really know this person yet. You probably haven't really seen them through a lot of things. It's just like you're putting all of this fantasy and potential into this person, and so it feels like there's a lot more wrapped up in it than there actually is, if that makes sense. Now, this is fun for a period of time. Like, it is fun to ride out, but there is going to come a point where it stops being fun and it starts being miserable, because now you put all your power into this person and you're trying so hard to control the specific outcome. You're utilizing them to get, certain feelings, certain needs met. When you reach that point, you have to do something kind of counterintuitive. You have to face the exact thing that you're running from. So, like, what you're so scared of is you're scared that they're going to abandon you, they're going to leave, the relationship's going to end, whatever. You have to sit with that. There's going to have to come a point where you move from pedestalizing this person, being obsessed with them, being like they're the one, like, yada, 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 to they might not be, and that's okay. And what happens in between can be really messy and heartbreaking, because what has to happen, in my experience, is, like, you are actually going to have to mourn the potential loss of this person. That's the only way to become detached, is to actually face those fears, face the thing that you're running so hard from, and actually sit with it and accept the fact that this person could reject you, this person could break your heart, and this person could walk away. It could not work out. They could not be the person that you thought they were going to be. And all of that's okay. And I know it's, like, easier said than done, but a lot of times, like, this is, like, a very deep and intimate process of actually sitting with these fears with yourself and actually processing these very real things, like the possibility you basically have to mourn the relationship. And it's interesting, like, even in healthy dynamics, like, the relationship's not necessarily going to end. You know what I mean? In fact, it's the only way that the relationship will actually stand a chance. And I will say, like, this pivoting point is the only time that relationships went from just being a possibility to actually standing a chance. And I'll tell you why. One, because this is when you actually detach and you're healthily secure, because you've faced this fear. You're not running from the rejection. You're not trying to control the situation. You know what I mean? You've sat with that possible outcome and you are okay with it. Like, you feel safe in that. You've held yourself through that process. You know what I mean? And B, like when you're in the limerent phases, like you don't actually know this person. Again, like so much of it is fantasy. And when it comes to like an actual relationship, like true love, like intentional love of like deeply knowing a person and like being like intentional with them and like discipline with them, you know what I mean? Like that's a choice. It's not just like this fleeting fantasy, this feeling. So like that's where the difference is. And unfortunately, like that, like when you get to that point, when you truly come to know a person and like all their flaws, that mourning almost always has to happen. Always. Because there's always a point where like that sort of mirage, like that fantasy you have of a person dies, at least to some extent. This doesn't have to be like this massive thing, but like there are things that there are initial perceptions we have of people when we start dating them and versus like who they actually are. So no matter what, there always has to be some sort of mourning process, like whether that's the mourning of someone you thought they were, someone you thought they could be, the type of relationship you thought it could be, or just the mourning of the possibility that it might not work out in and of itself. Because that's truly when you take your power back, and that's truly when you can actually become detached, is when you can sit with that and face that, and be okay with it. Because you know what? You're going to be okay either way. Pro tip for the day.